Today we have with us Hori Paora and Laura Hames-Franklin and Mariana Kannengiesser, myself, Neil Dougan, and we're going to talk on the topic of manifestation. And I have some information to share with the team here, and Mariana and I have been discussing how we can go forward with our project, and indeed the project has been evolving and memorizing continuously. And so one of the issues that we're dealing with is the actual manifestation of a business model which is sustaining within the setting of a self-responsible format. So, you know, what we're espousing and what we're talking to people about is being completely self-responsible, and in so doing to actually become aware of the needs of other people around yourself. So this is the basic approach that we're taking. And in there, where there can be really, you know, fundamentally no profit, because there's no interest in actually making a profit for yourself, nonetheless, there needs to be a model which supports the enterprise. So it actually supports the project and supports the opportunity to actually make this go forward. And so what we're wanting to, that's the background. And what we're wanting to look at today for, you know, your business, Laura, and your business, Hori, as well as the business of Mariana and myself together. So, and then also the way in which we're all cooperating and collaborating together, the ways in which we can actually manifest an opportunity to actually support the enterprise without it being lost in a hierarchy, without it being lost in a profit motive, without it being lost in any of those things. So, you know, these are fundamentally the things that we're wanting to have a look at today. And, you know, I thought through the people who I had contact with, and Laura, yourself, and Hori, yourself, are two people who I have deep confidence in that they're going to, you're both going to be able to work with Mariana and myself to evolve what it is to actually be able to work past these barriers. So as I understand it, the barriers that we're working with are the barriers of the old system. So the old system is profit, and it's about effectively stealing money from another person. And so all of our old business model has been about actually taking money off another person. And we've made ourselves feel better by saying that what we're doing is we're actually offering a service in response. So that what we're doing is we're actually giving back. So it's an exchange, and then in some way that actually makes us feel better about it. Where Mariana and I have come to is a point where we actually recognize that that is a lie. And it's a complete lie. And so what we're looking for is a way in which we can manifest an opportunity without actually resorting to the lie. So it's very bold, very confrontational, what I'm just actually saying there. And I spent my entire life, I'm just on 60, and I spent my entire life actually in this business model. And I acknowledge and I, you know, actually accept that this is what I've been doing. I've been, you know, engaged in all of this, and I've been engaged in the delusions. I've been engaged in the process of lying to myself about what it means to actually be in a so-called exchange. And so we're really interested to hear from, you know, what I consider to be two of the most creative people that I know, you know, what you've got to say and how we can help and how we can work together on evolving a completely new way of looking at this, like an absolutely new way, not a way based on lying to ourselves, that we're doing an exchange and so therefore it's okay, because subconsciously and at our deeper level we know that it's not true. We know that there's an intention to make profit. And, you know, as Hori knows, I've been involved in, you know, multi-million-dollar business, and so has Hori. And we know the lies that are actually involved, and who are we lying to? We're only lying to ourselves. And so we want to really try and explore here in a deeply honest and deeply open way, a completely new way of actually operating with this. So I open up the comments to everybody. So whomever would like to speak, and I'm hoping that in 60 minutes time, because I know Laura's only got 60 minutes with us here today, but within 60 minutes that we can actually encapsulate a new way forward.
Seeing as how you've only got 60 minutes, Laura, I think it's only fair that you should go first.
Oh, thanks. Do I get to speak for the whole 60 minutes?
If you wish.
No. Well, firstly, thank you, Neil. Thank you for opening up this conversation. I think it's a fascinating one, and one that I guess I feel like as a creative being who wants to, or has always strived to, put my feeling first, my health, my wellness, my support of my like deep inner truth over what my mind thinks might be or should be. And certainly the world of business tends to be that of you should be, driven in X, Y, Z, where you should be focusing on profit, you should be doing the things that are money driven. And it's always been something in me which has felt incongruent. And I have found that actually the times where I have been money focused are the times where things don't flow so well. I get exhausted, and the life or universe or my body, whatever it is, kind of just automatically does put the brake on. It's like, no, you can't do it that way. And it's interesting because I used to have a program where I worked with people who were looking to develop their businesses, but part of my ethos was my business is based on around a healthy lifestyle first. It's actually, going to dance class every day, eating a really good breakfast, not looking at my phone while I'm doing that, not multitasking, taking care of myself first, and then allowing an inner guidance system, which is, how can I share this feeling first? And then, as we are, interacting in the world of money, and we are needing money to live, to, to actually run a business, currently in the systems where we can help people, we are needing to dance in the world of the finances. But if it can come from that place of, I guess that, it all comes back for me to the inner guidance system of what feels true, and what feels like a balance of energy, and what feels like an inner guidance of when I'm putting forth a new offering or a program, what feels like a healthy and supportive exchange of energy that isn't based on profit, that is based on kind of a meeting of, I guess a self-responsibility. When we spend money on something, there is a choice of an investment into myself. And so I've kind of always had that too, kind of written into my vision of when anyone gives me money, that it is seen from their vision as this is an investment into myself. And then that kind of supports people's results to happen. So, I guess just for me, it would be bringing it back to that inner guidance, that place where we are listening to a wisdom that is from our heart, from our body, from a health-centered place that feels like a guidance rather than a mental, I'm doing this for, certain profit, or because I should, XYZ agenda. And then starting to shift what our money system is based on, starting to shift the paradigm of that, and, away from a hierarchical perspective and more into the, back into what I believe currency should be, which is the flow of energy, the current sea, the currency that flows, the yeah, the river of electric life force rather than, you know, the systems of control that have tried to kind of take that knowledge from us. I'm going to pause there and kind of pass the torch on. And yeah, I'd love to hear how that resonated. If you have any questions for me, yeah.
That certainly resonated with me in terms of everything that you described. And what I find interesting, and I equate with what Neil was talking about, having a system or an idea of not requiring profit to achieve the outcome. Unfortunately, my mind hasn't shifted to the revelation of his idea just now, where, if I understood it right, the idea of working for profit is actually stealing from someone. I've still got to come to terms with that. But I think in the context of your idea of undertaking a venture which is not profit-driven, I think that's absolutely admirable. However, I think that there has to be some consideration for the fact that to achieve that, we're still in the old world where money is part of how things are generated. And it's not with ill purpose that you provide something of value. And I love the term that Laurie used, was the exchange of energy, which is I think it's a better currency to use in your mind rather than an exchange of value. Because when you say exchange of value, it's more that the present perception is when you exchange value, you've got to give back dollars. Whereas if you're exchanging energy, it just seems a more open and valuable exchange. Now, having said all that, I think one of the first steps, if you haven't already considered that, is to form a charity which will embody everything that I've understood from what you've been saying about what your project is for, and the aims that you have behind the project. Now, with that formation of charity, it gives a definite focus in terms of the ideas or what's driving you, I think, because when you form a charity, there's a number of things that happen. You get concessions. I know that it comes to the profit side of the ledger, which you have to consider, because regardless of your great intentions, you still have to pay for the machine to put that idea out into the universe. And to do that, it has to be paid for, should I say. So you've got all your servers and everything that needs to maintain the back office of what you do. And I don't think there's any getting away from that. Now, with the charity, you've got the opportunity for people to donate. Now, that doesn't get away from the fact that there may be products or services that you provide that people would expect to pay for. Now, in that instance, I think you have an obligation to accept money for that in terms of the exchange of energy and obviously the exchange of value, because as Laura was explaining, if you had a product or service that you sold to someone, the way to look at that would be when they paid you, you'd have to believe, accept, or construct in your frame of reference that they were making an investment of self. Now, that's something that you cannot deny of everyone that does that. In fact, it would be, I think, completely wrong of you not to accept that investment of self that they made to you. Now, there is another really positive, and that's from my perspective, a real positive way or an advantage, should I say, of creating a charity. And that is that Google, in their infinite wisdom, provide an opportunity for charities to get up to $10,000 a month to advertise on their platforms to get your message out to whoever it is that you want your message to be presented in front of. And that I see as a huge opportunity. Now, obviously, it's not given out to everyone. There's certain conditions that you've got to meet. But that would, I would suggest, help accelerate the presentation of your ideas to the universe. And just on, moving away from that point, and I think that's a huge point. But as Laura was explaining, her creative being encompassing feelings, health and wellness first, listening to your inner voice, there is a major shift I've observed, and maybe it's because I only look at certain parts of the internet, because that's the lens through which we look at the world at the present time. And that I feel that there's a major shift in a lot of gurus, rather than pushing the idea of you can become anything that you want by buying my product or my service. You just make this little investment and you'll be able to make, $10,000 a month, 100,000, you can make millions. All you've got to do is to buy my shit, dare I say. Now that has moved a lot that I've seen. That still exists in lots of areas of the internet, but there's been a major shift by a number of prominent gurus to the fact that you may or may not believe it, Mr. Prospect or Mr. Purchase, Mr. Person watching my spiel, you have got within you a story which the world is waiting to hear. You may or may not believe it, but your life has been a valuable journey along which you have gained tremendous value. And believe it or not, Mr. Person watching, people will pay for that. And all you'd have to do is to give me the 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, whatever it is. Now that is a spiel that takes maybe at least 45 minutes to an hour, but upwards of 2 or 3 hours. But that's just a pitch to amplify that idea where individuals have got a valuable story. Now, obviously, they're marketers, but it's interesting. Maybe it's the fact that the universe is speeding our ideas up about coming to self-fulfillment or actualization or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But people like Tony Robbins, Brendan Burchard, there's a whole number of people that you may be aware of, but that's a focus that they have in their businesses. And when you come to like Tony Robbins, like he's approaching a billionaire and all the adventures that he's got. So he's not going to waste his time, talking about a product or service with Dean Graziosi to develop something that's going to be chump change. Like it's a big deal, and he has great influence. So the journey or the journey that we're on in terms of the exchange of energy the focus on good well-being, health, there's no question that that's resonating. So when you put the message that you both spoke of, there's going to be lots of people who are just waiting to hear it. And on that note, I shall open again the conversation.
I'm very comfortable in shifting from price to value.
Excellent.
This is a very good thing, and I am myself living on donations since 2 years. Since 2 years, I don't sell any product. I just accept donations and nothing else. So if somebody wants to have an invoice, I send them to another coach. And it worked perfectly. For myself, it worked perfectly. And I wanted, from an intellectual point of view, I wanted to get a split between money and a product and service. To get back to maybe the old communist point of view, where you just work and you just have the money you need, but you don't have the work and the money interlinked. It's both conditional, unconditional, not conditional.
Well, I think that's the idea that Neil was speaking about before. That's a complete shift in the model.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you've got it there. You know, don't worry about the idea of putting a price on whatever it is. And there's no need with that model, I think, for setting up a charity.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think a charity could reflect the ideas that you're proposing, no question.
One of the things that I noticed, Hori, is that great practitioners like Laura. So Laura's an extremely competent, very, very capable practitioner, and because of the sort of internal conflict, the actual execution of a business model becomes very complicated. It's complicated, and it's not satisfactorily operating, and indeed over recent years that has sort of decreased. So probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I did a similar thing to what Mariana's doing, and that I don't at all equate money to what I do. So if people want to make a donation to me, so people will ask me, how much does it cost? And I'll say, well, look, this is a series of ideas that might be reasonable, but there's no linkage between what I'm going to do for you and money. There's no linkage at all. And it's been relatively successful, to the point where there's always enough money. so there's sufficient money, but it's not, it's not the same as the old days where I would set a price. But I'm not at a place where I can anymore actually set a price and link what I'm doing for a person, because what I'm doing for a person is a heart relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assisting you. I'm here to help you if you wish to help me. And, Hori, this is very Koha-like. If we go back, I don't mean modern Koha in New Zealand. I'm talking about going back to the old people, where a gift would be given. And that's it. It would just be a gift. So what I'm seeing, like, we've got 4 people on this call here who are all in one way or another actually engaged in, not exactly a struggle, but like it's uncharted waters, and we need to actually be able to clear our way through this. I see a need to do so, which is why I wanted to call this call today. But Laura, there's a lot of things that Hori was talking about that may be of interest to you there.
I guess I'm interested also to know, Laurie, you and Laurie, your name on the things is
Hori.
Marianne.
Hori. It's Hori.
Oh, Hori.
Or George.
Sorry?
Or George. So
Oh,
George is the English version of Hori. Yeah.
oh,
So,
I didn't know
so
that.
Hori is the Maori word, Maori name.
Okay. Well, now I understand. I'm like, hang on a minute, I'm confused. Yes. There was something I wanted to ask you, and I can't remember what it was. Oh, I guess maybe a question just when you said in terms of your mind is currently shifting relative to this conversation. Could you just share a little more on that? Because then I feel like there was something in there that I felt like I was interesting, and I wanted to maybe speak to, but I'd love to just hear a couple more words on
Okay.
kind of where
Was
your
that
vision with the
okay? Was that on the idea of profit and my reaction to the term stealing from others?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, yeah. I'd never heard of that before, and the idea being completely foreign to me. It's primarily because I've been steeped in the idea of, like forever, having a price on whatever you did.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that is true value or whatever. That's the only thing, that's been the only way that I've existed or even thought.
Right.
The idea of not doing that, wow. I mean, I've heard of the idea of providing service and only asking for a donation before, but not in terms of an enterprise, because I feel the power and conviction in what you're talking about with the enterprise, and it's huge in my mind. Now, equating the idea of not taking money for that, yeah, I just at the present time have a struggle with that idea. Well, no, it was a struggle when Neil first said it, but now I'm more accepting of what it is and the outcomes of what they could be. Just a thought with what I was speaking about before, about all the gurus talking about how you, Mr. Person who's watching this, has a story within you and it's valuable.
Yeah.
That's part of the pitch that they have, and then how they present that comes down to the fact that, and this is only something I've seen in the past few days, where they make their pitch rather than the old days of saying, this is what you're going to get, and bang, bang, bang. These are all the great reasons that I'm going to answer for you why you should do it. Now, rather than being 20 or 30 reasons that people would go through, and you've probably been on webinars when they say, not only do you get this, but you get this and that and that and that and that. This is valued at, 1,000, and the total value is 30,000, but you only have to pay 1,000. What I've observed, a couple of the gurus is they say, this is the value that you're going to achieve for it. This is what the product is. Again, no burbling on about what it involves. They just describe what the product is. This is how much you pay. If you like it, I'll welcome you aboard. Now, my interpretation of what's happened in that instance is they're trying to push away people who don't respect the idea that they have and can see genuine value. And what that means is they're going to be working with people that have great intention about what the guru has described. Now, when that's the case, you've got people resonating with your idea and intention. When they get the product, they have greater likelihood of using it properly, because in the old days, old gurus would sell their great product, whatever it is, and depending on the statistics that you look at, less than 10% actually used it, and only 5% succeeded because they used it all the way through. They consumed it properly. They adhered to all the rules, and it's, to some extent, it's a reflection of life. You have any undertaking where people, there's only the 1% or the 5%, 4% that succeed in whatever endeavor, whether it's, it doesn't matter, the industry or the business. There's always going to be people that succeed by any measure. And there's going to be the elite that follow everything, or they put their whole effort, put their soul, etc., into whatever they do, and they become, the leaders in what they aspire to be. So does that give you a different perspective on what I was talking about, but also answer your question about the what I was talking about before?
Absolutely. And I think it also, it's like the level at which we are in a society where we can go. I mean, Marianne, who has this amazing situation where she can do fully donation based, and that works. I mean, that's like incredible. And I just think depending on what someone does, how they are working with people, their life situation, they may be on a different part of that spectrum. And I feel like the most important thing is, rather than like trying to attain to never having to ever, ask for money again, it's, really more like, where am I at in the spectrum of my journey of life, of putting my work out there? I feel like it's an important step for many people in the current paradigm to grow their own sense of value and confidence in their work, where they are able to really stand true in the money exchange, but knowing, I think the key is, rather than necessarily being about, charging money or not charging money, it's what is your feeling connected to the exchange, connected to the dynamic? Is there it's like, are you doing it for me? It's like, is the money coming to me to make me have the things I want, and the kind of more ego perspective. And again, there's nothing wrong with having things we want. Like, I think that's wonderful. But when we are receiving money, it's finding that place of the knowing, of the trust that this money is flowing through me for a reason. And it's almost like the gatekeeper of the energy flow. And, for myself, just as I tune into the energy exchange when someone is transferring money to me, just as I do when I am in my life, it's like there are many things I see and I'm like, oh, that would be nice, or I want to, do that, or, that thing. But unless it's guided of yes, now it's the time for a new blender, or now it's time, to send the money this way or to invest in this thing. I feel like then it becomes less about the individual being a hoarder and more about being a conductor of energy. And I think in that, when we can be that and hear the guidance of, what is wanting to be invested in, receiving money can then, if it's guided by that deeper wisdom can be a very spiritual practice. I think it's, you know, and being able to be a receiver of energy is, I mean, it's, I couldn't, you know, it's like I'm in a situation now where, you know, right now I'm living in Bali, which is awesome because, you know, I'm in a situation where the currency exchange is that where I am automatically rich, even if I don't have a whole lot of money relative to the Western world. You know, so that does change things. But, you know, I guess, you know, 10 years ago when I was establishing my business, the amount of currency that did flow through me and flow through my business really did give me, or allowed me to experience, a grounding and a confidence and a knowing of the impact of my role, my voice, my work, which now, you know, I can do sessions for people in situations where there is no exchange of money, but it's almost like I know the value. And so then in a way, the session that can be received can be that much deeper than if I never had charged for money and I always gave it away for free. And I never really, you know, fully owned just the value of the work within our current paradigm of finances. So I kind of feel like it's a bit of a full circle in that I think there is this awesome ideal of never having to charge people, but at the same time, I feel like there's also something awesome in being able to charge and receive money, but in a way that is authentic and still heart connected, and where you become part of the flow of the universe. Because, you know, it could be that for, you know, some work, if it being requested of us to put it out there in a bigger way to receive funds so that it can support the growth, you know, to support the next step in whatever kind of like the universe is asking, I guess. So I feel like it's kind of, we can be in any part of the spectrum and we can be in our different part of our life cycle, and it will depend how we're offering our work, you know, our exchange, you know, whatever it is that we are offering as our work, or if it's a product, you know, like you're not going to be able to currently create the product for no money. Like it needs that exchange, but it's more about the feeling we have when we're part of this system. So yeah, I guess like it's full spectrum, and when we can be a part of the universe's heart-centered ecosystem, then we can be in all aspects of the rich or the poor and neither define us, but we can show up to be whatever role we're being asked to be, you know, as far as money, currency flowing through. And also there's been times when, you know, I have been part of a bigger flow of finances, and I could feel, I remember just this feeling and knowing of the, as money flows through me, I am supporting the shift of money as a whole. And it's kind of like, if you imagine it like a water, and I can be a filter of the water to, or an energizer of the water, and then to put it back into the currency, then that ripples out and that affects change across, you know, the whole globe. And so it was like I knew that that flow needed to happen in that way. And then also there's been times where the flow isn't super, you know, larger in numbers, but I don't feel any less of value, you know, so I feel like it's kind of, for me, it's been really good to experience the broad spectrum, and my value isn't now based on currency, but I know I can show up and kind of help direct it as need be. So yeah.
We have two questions in the chat. One is it's from a German person asking about guilt feelings connected to money.
What was the first thing you said? Something feelings?
Guilt feelings connected to money. As though those things belong together, money and guilt.
Feeling guilty.
Oh, guilt.
Oh, guilty.
Oh, the question was, do they?
She feels that this is connected, and she asks what you think about that.
Right. I think that many people have experienced that, and I think that fundamentally it has been educated into us. And I feel part of the challenge with that is that we are, if we're in the money system, the global money system, there is less than 100% pure energy, let's say, or you could call it a little bit of corruption in the system itself. It's like we're working in a system which isn't heart-centered. It, you know, there's certainly a lot of money, fear, like fear, control, power, abuse with it mapped into the system itself. And so for us to be able to shift that, it's really, I feel like, a two-part awareness of, one, being aware that it's kind of imprinted into the money system itself. So it's not necessarily yours, but you can shift it if you have the awareness. And the other part being, where in me, like, is that fear? You know, I feel like guilt is often comes from fear, and it's usually a fear of survival. It's a fear of having enough, of being enough, of, am I going to be ousted? It's that real primal, fundamental, like, fear of death, you know, of separation. So I feel like when we can embrace it, embrace the, oh, this is interesting, I'm noticing that feeling of guilt around money. What is mine? What is not mine? How can I listen to my wisdom and tune into that heart-centered place of, does this feel true in the exchange of energy? And what is it in me that's coming up connected to, you know, feeling not worthy, or feeling like I'm taking from someone, or, you know, I won't survive. And then, you know, we are all here as, you know, people who offer support for people to help shift those things. You know, you may be able to do it yourself in your own, just, you know, awareness, through meditation, through movement, through dance, through the amazing work that we share. And then also, I feel like as we can shift that guilt within ourselves, and we can shift our relationship to what it's like, I'm defining what money is. I'm defining what currency is. I'm not playing in that old system. Yes, I'm a part of it, but when I receive money, my choice is that this is energy and it's flowing through me, and I am choosing it to come through my heart, feel embraced, feel supported, feel like it's the universe's energy rather than some corporation's control, you know, mechanism. And through that, it shifts, it changes, and that's when then we start to live in that place of the, you know, the divine synchronicities, the miracles, the times where you're like, oh, how's that going to all come together? And then boom, 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 you know, oh, this person shows up, this thing happens, this, you know, the magic happens. And then it's like, oh yeah, like that's where the energy is, that's where the currency is, not in the like fear survival place. So yeah, let me know if that helped at all, to the person who is experiencing that. And
She didn't write anything at the moment, but definitely money is not the problem. The problem is greed.
yeah,
Money is just a thing.
One
And
of the
there's,
brilliant,
sorry, Neil, the second question here is, what are your feelings about living without money?
I mean, I feel like in my imaginary world of the future, which maybe it's imaginary, maybe it isn't, there is no money, and it's awesome. But it's a different world. It's like it's a world where it's like it is more in that, you know, quote unquote magical realm. It is where that guidance system is just so tuned in, and you know where to go, and you know who to converse with, and you know what to offer, and it's like there's just this beautiful web of giving and receiving where we don't need money. And that to me is like bliss land. And I'm super excited for that time, and I believe that it will be in my current human lifetime. I know that it is in mine and our futures, you know. And then I think in the current, you know, 2020 reality, we're in such a moment where, I mean, on a level, you know, if we wake up enough, we realize there isn't any way. I mean, the whole thing is a big joke. You know, it's like, you know, we're playing with just like toy money. I mean, you know, the world is currently revolving, and it's not, I mean, what's money anyway? It's just someone's imagination. But yeah, so it's kind of like I'm part in both worlds. One foot in the future, one foot in the current, and dancing between the two.
I love that description, Laura. You've described my nirvana, my heaven. And I too spent some time there, not nearly enough, I might add, but you just rekindled that desire for me to bring that more into focus in terms of the things that are a priority in my day. Thank you for that.
It's awesome. I'm so glad.
And yeah. I've got to commend you immensely for the eloquent way you answered the last question, because that covered a gamut of so many valuable and great points. And I couldn't have put it better myself.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Well, when I get out of the way and just trust the words coming through, it's kind of the same, you know, with all of this. It's like as we as individuals can get out of the way, and you know, if you asked me what I said, I wouldn't necessarily be able to tell you. It's like, you know, and it's that idea of credit, you know, it's like, I don't need the credit. We don't need to give credit. We just allow the words to come through, and sometimes they come through your voice and my voice, and you know, and that is the thing. I think when you spoke of the people who are encouraging people's voices to come through, saying your voice has value, because I do see it that is the place where we are all needed. All our voices are needed. All our perspectives are needed. Our resonance is needed. And like, that's a world where then we don't need money, because we're always in the right place at the right time, and everyone is freely giving and sharing of their perspective and their part of the whole. I'm so excited for that world, which we're luckily in and creating.
One of the very interesting things with the work that we're doing with these communities, so like we're talking to a lot of people who are forming communities at the moment, and one of the issues is that we can remain engaged with the existing. So, in other words, the profit-centered approach to things. So, in other words, what I consider to be this sort of lie based on the idea of exchange is totally different to what you're talking about, Laura. This notion of the flow of energy. The flow of energy is a perfectly adequate thing. Is we're doing things for one another, and the energy is flowing around. So that's perfectly in the model where we're away from the profit motive. But it's in so commonly actually gets tied back into this notion that we need to actually we've got to get a plus out of this. We actually have to get a plus out of it. And the commentators that we've been talking to are all saying, why would you want to go forward with a new community structure and that type of thing and inherit something which is based on a winner and a loser? Why would you want to do that? What's the potential in that scenario? And how about we actually genuinely go for something which is based on let's just share, let's cooperate and collaborate and actually create something much higher, and like a multiplication of what's actually available, and without any of this sort of limiting to what I might get out of it. So. And it's complicated because, Hori, like I hear you saying over and over again that the gurus are all talking about, we're providing this consistent value to people. But inside of that, there's still this expectation that there's going to be more coming back the other way. That it's inherent in the system. And, what these new thinkers are talking about is that model is completely gone. It is just literally about the flow of energy. So it's many years ago now, actually, I channeled a meditation which we developed into something that people listen to home. It's called The Gold in My Veins. And the whole notion of that is that, this gold, which is energy, this energy of money, is flowing around, and that it flows into you and it flows around yourself, and then it flows out again. And that's the whole key, is that it's not about most of it staying behind before it flows out. It's that all of it flows out. So it's all flowing in and it's all flowing out. And it's just this complete flow of energy that you're talking about. And once again, the languaging around this is so, like, you have to be so careful. You just have to be so careful because there's so much opportunity to delude yourself, with these things. So in terms of like a go forward, Hori runs a marketing business, and obviously Laura, you and Mariana and I are more in the sort of health world, but nonetheless we're providing services. All of us are providing services to people. And if we are, like, it's not only a matter of just it being more heart-centered, because you can be heart-centered, you can have love for your customer and all that type of thing, and still want to have a profit. And still an expectation that there's going to be more left over once the transaction is finished. Because that's the process. The process is that there's going to be more left over after the transaction is finished. So what are we doing to move this?
This is what Laura said, it's being a conductor and not out of the motive of greed, try to make heaps of money and build a stock that you won't share anymore. There's an interesting model in Germany from somebody who created a virtual money. And this money you can take in, but you have to get rid of it within 2 months. Otherwise, it just doesn't have any value anymore. It's just to educate yourself to keep it circling.
Wow.
That was a great idea of getting rid of greed. And that currency was called gradido, which means something like thank you.
All right.
Wow. That's cool.
There's an interesting idea we never thought about, that we could take the value out of money once somebody makes a heap of it and tries to have it for his own. That it only has value while circling. So we put an MHD on it, and when you have it longer than 8 weeks, it just isn't worth anything anymore.
Does that mean you can never take like a break from doing your work?
If you're, let's say, if you're working out of your heart and you like doing your work, why would you stop it?
Well, absolutely. But there's been, times in my life where maybe I've gotten sick, or, my attention needs to be given elsewhere, or I'm, travel, or, a loved one is sick, let's say. Kind of there are, I never want to stop doing and giving. But it's, it was just interesting because I, could see how it could be, then it could create some fear, maybe,
Yes. Yes. When I started working only on donation, I had to overcome a lot of fear.
Yeah.
When somebody called me and said, I want to have a coaching, is it 3,000 or something euros? And I said, you can't buy me anymore. You can donate to me personally, to my crazy lifestyle, to my personal craziness, but you can't buy anything anymore. It's over.
Did you already have quite a big clientele, like people who knew about you and your work? And
I had, yes, but then I moved to Greece and from Austria, and my clientele broke a bit down because they were used to see me in person. And it was a big confronting of fear. And when you talk about, I want to have a break, I want maybe have a child and take some time off, then there still should be the trust in persons in you that they give you money because they know sooner or later you will serve them again.
Yeah, if you have the donation base set up. Yeah.
Or even if you have this money which has only a certain time value, and maybe magically dissolves itself into dust after 8 weeks.
Right.
Which is a crazy idea, but I think it would be a valuable idea.
Our current money system is kind of that anyway. It's just a matter of time before it's like, poof, all right, that didn't exist. Yeah. Yeah, it's great conversation.
So what would you choose if we choose out of every existing possibility? Would we still choose to have money and be paid? Or what would we choose if we have everything, every option, every thinkable option?
Yeah, I mean, for me, being able to just follow my guidance, do my work, and have what I need, that'd be awesome. And not having to think about money. But I do, I enjoy money in a way. Like, it's not like I feel like it's my enemy. I want to get rid of it. It's just another dynamic. But, yeah.
Marianne, could you be talking about the state of a universal basic income where everyone gets a certain amount.
Oh, this is maybe a step in between total quantum leap concerning a society of money, that we all would get unconditional income that would serve for what we need. Just that we don't have any worries anymore. We have enough to eat. We have enough to buy little things that we want. We have enough for a roof over the head. And if we would do so, the question always was, would we still be working? Would we still do what we do?
I think for us, probably yes. For most people, probably no. And I think until we are in a world where there are, you know, I don't really want to go down the robot world, but like there are currently a lot of jobs which maybe are not in people's most, you know, it's not like they wake up every morning and they're like, this is my dream to go, you know, do some kind of service job. I mean, I think many people can love that, but I think there's many people who are doing it just for the money. If they didn't have,
what kind of job you're thinking of?
I don't know, dustmen, people who like collect the rubbish or clean the streets, or, you know, certain, you know, and many businessmen probably wouldn't necessarily be their calling. You know, I think many people who work in restaurants or waitresses or chefs, maybe they might have a part calling for it, but would they do it if they weren't getting paid for it? Probably not, and probably not in the level. And even people who have a, you know, like let's say a massage therapist, you may love that work and want to offer it, but would you do it, you know, 20 hours a week like you currently are? Probably not. So I think that the world would need a big global restructuring, you know, or like, I don't want to think that like mass farming is the way to go. I think ideally there would be smaller farms and people working with the earth. But again, would there be enough people where they're like, that's my calling, unless everyone was doing that for themselves? And then, you know, we'd need a planet where there's enough places where we can grow the food that we need, you know, the right weather conditions. So yeah, it's interesting. I feel like currently our world wouldn't, like it would shut down predominantly, like if, you know, suddenly not everyone, you know, if everyone like never had to work again, but we'd figure it out, you know. Like I think then what it would catalyze would be the passion to figure out, okay, we've got this needs to work, we want our society to work together, how are we going to, you know, offer our services and the things that we want to do? And there'll probably be a bunch of restructuring and people get excited to create systems whereby they can run themselves. So yeah,
I think if we would really create a new society in the sense of a quantum leap, and we don't want people to have to care for rubbish, we will just venture on a very low waste society.
A what society?
Low waste.
Yes, exactly. And like not just buying stuff, like things wouldn't come in packets. Like what would we spend our money on? It would be a very different world. I feel like here in Bali, I feel like that, like I don't need much, and there's no, well, you know, it's beautiful objects and things, but there's not stuff to buy. You don't need stuff. You just, it's like, you know, in the vegetables come from the farm and they're wrapped in banana leaves, and like there's not that same accumulation of things. So
Yeah, I think humans have got, you know, as a society, we've got a self leveling mechanism. If we were all to have our basic needs taken care of, we would engineer, or there would be a situation where those of us who are industrious and desire more, we would find a way so that we could do whatever it was to enable us to get the things that we wanted. You know, we may want better or very expensive wines, etc., or grass-fed beef instead of buying the stuff from the supermarket. You know, all of that, all of those options, we have that in us inherently, and there would be a certain percentage reflective of what I spoke before about. There would be the 5%, and then there would be the next layers down until we get to the majority, which is 90%, dare I say, which would accept the situation of what you were describing, where all of our needs are taken care of. But I think most people desire more than what they have. And of course, there are those that currently live on social benefits or the welfare of the state. And even in countries which don't have a welfare system, the power of the family would look after those who needed a bit more in certain circumstances, maybe when they got sick or they needed to do whatever. I think that that's what you're describing is a great place. I don't think it's quite to the magical space that you were describing, Laura, but it's well on its way from where we're living now in this world. And I think, you know, with the pandemic, there's been certain things that you look where people's industry have provided different things that you would never have thought of before. You know, like providing PPE, you know, the little 10-year-old or 12-year-old who's printing stuff on their 3D printer. Those sorts of things were almost unimaginable. Well, they were 2 or 3 years ago. But the circumstances was like a crucible for change. It was something that we would never have thought of. But the situation has made that come out. And if in the society that you were describing, Marianne, if that were to happen, it'd be a great place because human ingenuity would thrive, whatever the case.
Definitely. Yeah. And I don't think that we would care so much about very good wine or exclusive wine. I guess we would care about having 4 hours to 5 hours free space per day to connect and find communities and maybe be of service the other 5 hours. But
yeah, there's that too, but you got to appreciate that the human condition and the state that it's in at the moment. A lot of people don't realize that they need that.
Yeah.
You know, like this. If you look in the States, the amount of diabetes and obesity and all that sort of stuff. There's no reason why that should be the case in one of the most advanced societies in the world, supposedly. Mm-hmm. People know what they should be doing to be healthy. But what do we do to make them change? They have to come to their own realization through whatever avenue. And it comes down to, I think, partly what Laura was talking about before, is the magic in circumstances. Something changes that you had no idea was out there. And speaking from my own experience, which I alluded to the last time we were talking, and that was, I was a big boy. You know, I'm not the smallest guy at the moment, but I was 5 stone heavier than I am now. And then it wasn't until I got the letter from the doctor saying you're pre-diabetic, that changed, like in an instant. Like it was magic when I look back at it. I had to institute different things in my lifestyle that, for me now, that's just normal. In fact, you know, like today, I just ended a 5-day water fast as part of my normal regime. So, yeah, things will change. And it comes down, I'd written down about the notes about today, the intention. It's a thing that's intended, an aim or a plan. You know, you put it out there to the universe, and magic can happen when it's right, when everything's aligned for you, or you've put in the work, or you've put in the ideas, the effort. May not be in a direct line to what you're seeking, but with the intention that you have, you may be taken off route along the way, but inevitably with that intention, you ultimately are brought back, maybe not in the time frame that you wanted or hoped for, but with that intent, that belief, that hope, the faith, all of those melded into the recipe of what your outcome you desire. It is almost, well, I eliminate the word almost, it is inevitable. So, you know, with that thought, I applaud your undertaking, and and I hope today that I've managed to add something to the conversation of value.
Laura, I know that you need to get away. Is there something you wanted to share just before you pop off?
Just thank you. Thank you for the conversation and the, just bringing forth this vision of a new world. Yeah, it's been really magic to be here. So thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thanks again, and we'll catch up soon.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you, magical Laura.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
So we have another question here. This is food cooperations. As they are in New York, are a good way of supporting communities.
Okay. Can you excuse me for...
Food corporations, Marianne, you're talking about.
Food
so like...
I know about this. People who just go shopping in big markets and they shop together and have better prices for that.
Okay. Well, one of the interesting things with, togetherness structures is that how do you go about actually allowing people to actually have their individuality? Because one person, likes to do a 5-day water fast, and somebody like me likes to eat. And, so we have to actually allow that individuality when we're actually cooperating and living together. And how that actually then gets entailed into bulk buying and buying without packaging and all those types of things that, Laura was talking about there before. What you do with all of that is an interesting question. Because the last thing that I would want, so if I'm talking about Neil, if I was in a community, in a sustaining community, an eco community, however you want to describe it, and somebody said to me, well, you can only have brown rice because that's, the best rice that you can have, and you're not allowed to have white rice, I wouldn't be very happy. So how you actually manage that diversity, how you actually allow diversity, but at the same time actually have a cooperative process around, supply, because it's about supply, what you're talking about.
It's about supply. We have this kind of thing here where we have a member in the community who is allergic to wheat and other crops, and mostly eats potatoes. So on our dish in the evening, mostly there is potato, because cooking for different dishes for many people is a bit of not what I like to do. So it's only sometimes that I cook noodles or things like that, when I know that there's a lot of leftover potatoes that will satisfy the person who only can eat potatoes. But we have that thing actually going on. And on the other hand, I realized not eating wheat and not eating noodles is something that serves me very well. I actually feel better.
So you feel better for doing that as well. Yeah. But that idea of serving diversity is like whenever you get this whole idea of a collective living, that we're going to work, we're going to live together and we're going to collectively have collective goals from a group of people and that sort of thing. That idea that it's going to become boring and not what we want, not exciting and not extending. Hori, what you were talking about there before when you were talking, even with a guaranteed minimum income and that sort of thing, that there would be still people who would want more. They would want to excel. And I would question that it needs to be that they need more money or that they need a better glass of wine or something like that. I would think that probably that would easily be turned into, I want to excel by being the best at whatever I can be, like the best that I can be. And that would actually satisfy that need without it being, I need to be able to consume more expensive or different or whatever things. But then how do you do that in such a way that you actually allow the diversity of the person who actually does want to be, have an elite or something?
You just have to see how it fits in. If somebody needs to be an achiever because that person is still attached to achievements, then treat it like a disease. You can't tell somebody guilty because of having a disease. You just learn to cope with that disease and slowly by slowly help the person drop the disease.
If they choose to do so.
If they choose
So,
to do
we see lots of people in our community, musicians and artists and these sorts of people, and for that matter, marketers, whatever it is that people are really, really good at. And you look at them and you think, my goodness, that person, they're exceptionally good at that thing. They're a wonderful artist or they're a wonderful marketer or they're a wonderful baker or, whatever it is that they're doing. And, for those people for whom that is really fulfilling, self-fulfilling for them, then that needs to be allowed for.
Yes,
that they can be the elite.
There's always a difference whether the driver is achievement and attachment to achievement, or whether you just enjoy doing something and that for your just expressing a talent. Two different things.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
If it's out of the joy of doing it, it's like a dolphin jumping in the water. It's out of joy. It's not of, I'm going to do the highest jump. And therefore I'm doing training. It's a different notion.
That's very true. You don't hear of one dolphin saying that I'm going to train up to be the highest jumper. That's very true. What the dolphins do is they love to jump out of the water. That's what they love to do. Yeah. So the people who, Hori, what you're, underneath what you're looking at there is that, could I bear with a life of the average? And the life of the average would be a life without joy, without the life of achieving things and being able to jump high out of the water like a dolphin. I can see what you mean, Marianne.
Oh, we can't hear Hori.
Your microphone's off.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Okay. What I was going to say is, of all those people that have got great aspirations to succeed, to be better than the average bear, so to speak, there's lots of people as marketers that want to be great. They've got the desire, and yet, like I was talking before about, there's a certain percentage that reach the 1% or the 5% as a reflection of life. Not all marketers, despite that they may be fervently desirous of being the best in their field. They may well be, but they're not achieving the monetary rewards that A, they thought they were going to make, B, they wanted to make because they think that they're so good, because of a whole number of reasons. And that is dependent on a number of things out of their control, because they're not aware of certain things that would get them to the next level. Now, in the scenario that you were talking about, Marianne, I don't know how that would be accommodated in what you describe. Is there a way?
For somebody to be in the 1%
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me. I can hear myself. Can you hear me, Neil?
Yeah, I can hear you, Marianne. Yeah.
Oh. Neil can hear me.
Oh, I can now, sorry.
Okay.
So you were talking about this 1%. If that would be in a donation society, or if that can exist in a society with unconditional income.
Yes.
Yes, I think that talent-based, we will see a lot more diversity. We will have a lot more self-responsible people, and we will have a lot more people who really find the purpose of life. And once you did find your purpose of life, you're unique and extraordinary anyway. So instead of trying to be the best, and by that being in the 1% range, you can be unique and even be less than 1%, because you're the only one who can do it in that special way.
Right, that may be the case, but there's other people who aspire to the same thing that you do, but they won't be as good as you. I mean, that's just the way that life is.
Yes, this is the way in a life we have, where we say, I want to be a teacher. I want to be a teacher for German language. And then a lot of people try to be teacher for German language, and some of them succeed and some very successful and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't copy to do something, and you just go for, I am the unique person who does exactly that, maybe teaching German by some very specific method you yourself developed. You're the unique person, and there's no competition between you and some other doing it, because nobody will do the same thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's the difference between being the best and being unique.
Well, being unique it's by that definition makes you the best, because there's no other competition.
There's no competition. So the unconditional income might serve in taking the competition out of society.
Wow. Okay, that's miles apart from universal basic income. Unconditional income has got a different spin.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Because you get it because you're born. It's natural.
What do you think?
I was thinking of it.
Yeah. What do you think about the idea of setting up a charity?
It suits me, absolutely. For myself, it's that feels natural, because in there, the service still is disconnected to the income. You get it for the idea you spread into the world. You don't get it for the things you actually do. You get it for the content, the idea, the intention, the purpose.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, because initially I had the thought that may have been contrary to where you were thinking. However, what you just described makes absolute sense, absolute alignment, which makes the idea of what I was talking about in terms of getting your message out. I think that warrants a bit of exploration, and I'll dig in and find out a bit about that more, because I was intimately associated with people and the idea of doing that, where they helped certain charities get a lot of exposure. And like I was describing before, there was some of them who tried to do it, but because they didn't have the right intention, I feel, they didn't satisfy some of the rules that were designed to weed out, those who didn't have the right intention.
Okay.
Which is absolutely a great thing. And you just every month you get that. So there's that that's absolutely wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a note before we started, because this jumped out at me. It was a quantum leap in your description,
Mm-hmm.
and I got this definition out of a dictionary. A quantum leap is any sudden and significant change, advance, or increase. So I think that idea of accepting and understanding the value of the charity and the opportunity, perhaps, of what I was describing before, where you can get up to $10,000 a month, would, in my mind, make a significant change, advance, or increase in the progress related to what you're doing.
It would serve our needs absolutely, and we would be able to enhance our work immensely.
Yeah.
Not only going for the newspaper, and the video library, but we could also shift on the project Saving Homeopathy. We could shift on the project of getting awareness for all the other brains from the spectrum, from ADD to Asperger autism. And we could do a lot more connecting the communities that already exist, and do research on how to really found communities and community-based living that is functional and takes a step for waking up people.
Absolutely.
To really get aware and get to a lifestyle that is led by awareness.
Yeah. You've described a lot of things in part of what I would imagine would be your vision. If I could, and you'll find this when you look at the rules of how to get this this funding, and it is something that would be helpful, I feel, in terms of what it is that you're going to do, and that is to get what's the word? It's like the word vision is something that a lot of people say, but it's even more powerful than a vision. But for our discussion here today, a vision will be sufficient, and that is to have something which is actually quite small, but it's a distillation of all the things that you talk about, So it isn't always easy to construct that. But what it does is, and the ideal situation would be that when people were exposed to it and read it, or it was related to them, it would still remain as powerful as what it is when you construct it. So if I could say that a vision was a product, just say it's a little ball. This is your product. Your vision is this ball I have in my hand. When that vision is passed on to someone else, it doesn't change. And the power of that ball continues wherever it is. Now, the thing is, with the vision, there's got to be absolutely no chance for it to be misinterpreted as a marble, say. When someone is exposed to it, reads it, there can be no question in their mind about what it is that they have. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And when you have it such, it's in that form, that is just so powerful, because it'll encapsulate your intention, your expectation, your intention, all of that. It's, it's not easy.
It's not easy, but it's somehow it's linked to a process of alchemy. I don't know whether you know something of this.
Love it.
Methods.
Oh, absolutely. That's absolutely it.
Yeah. And if you have the crisis in creating a spagyric essence, you need to know when to stop that crisis in there, when to open up the bottle again and get light and oxygen in there again. And then you can distill the real etheric substance out of it. And when I look at our team that started 3 months ago, and I look at the purification process and what is the distillate that came from it, then it is power of decision, a decision-making power, something like that. It is absolute trust, and it's a lot of self-esteem. Actually, something like what Laura was speaking about. This is what I would say is the distillate of the teamwork the last 3 months.
Beautiful.
Well, it's important to actually see your way through these transitions and to actually recognize the transitions. That's really important. And, I definitely take on board what you're saying there, Hori, about the idea of that vision, or whatever you're going to call it, making sure that it's constructed in such a way that it can't be misinterpreted. So you have to be so clear and so carefully clear around that. And, one of the things that we're doing at the moment, and, my introduction here today is purposefully challenging because it's a way of actually allowing us to actually focus in and get much clearer about what that ball is going to be, what that nature of it is. And, I'm very appreciative of the contribution that you've made today, Hori, so thank you so much. Yeah. So, Mariana, I feel as though we're probably at a point where we could draw the meeting to a close. So was there anything specifically you wanted to add at the end?
That there are a lot of opportunities to restructure society, and money is a big topic in it. And maybe we just have to get creative about that and do some try and error thing, but drop the old, which definitely does not serve.
Well, if we can do that thing, which is about resources and the flow of resources, and we say, here it is, here our ideas around it are in this ball. So Hori's ball, we're going to call it from now on. And and so here we've got Hori's ball, and we're getting clear about what that is. So clear that anybody can understand and recognize what our intentions are. And it's about resources, and it's about flow of energy, the languaging that we've been using, understanding that it is resource-based, but it's about flow, and it's an energetic flow in particular. So we'll put some work into that, and or if you're able to actually assist us in any of those processes as well, that'd be great too.
I'd love to, and I'm grateful for being able to be on today and to provide some of the ideas that I have, which have just come straight off the cuff, with a bit more thought and intention about, what you come up with, or some guidelines in the way that I could direct my thinking and intent. I'm hopeful of coming up with some even more valuable ideas to throw into the crucible of the intents that you guys have. I love it.
I just did write down that what we are doing is a future link to a diverse and holistic community. And if it only serves those principles very well, there's a lot done.
Okay, I think a good way to look at it, because this is just a thought that springs to mind, whatever words that you use will resonate with the people who understand the language that you speak.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's your intention to just address those people and speak to the converted, that's great, because that's a huge market. I'll just use terms that I'm used to using. That's huge in itself. If you were to alter the words just slightly, and I'm not suggesting that you should, but if you did, that would increase your audience, which is not always the right thing to do. If it aligns with your ultimate purpose, that market that understands the words that you use, it's going to be plenty big enough. And that audience, because you're not going to get all of them, you're going to get a percentage who will take the actions that you have in the steps that you follow, in the way that you design your better than machine, but the mechanism that you use to bring people closer to the ideas that you have, and fully understand, appreciate, and implement what it is that you have at your core. So of all those people who understand what you're talking about, there's going to be those that respond, and there's different ways of responding to you. Those that respond, it's not going to be 100%. There's going to be, and it depends on the words that you use in your ball. But of that number that respond, there's going to be a number that take all the steps that you require, which is going to be in your funnel, whatever that may be.
Mm-hmm.
Depending how many steps that you have in your funnel, there's going to be a certain percentage that take the first step, and that is going to be to do whatever. But if, just say there's 3 steps in your funnel, there's going to be a percentage to take 1.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a good percentage of that number that takes step 1 that will take step 2.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be a lesser percentage that take step 3, and the people who take step 4 are going to be your they're going to be your zealots. They're going to be those who cannot talk about you. They cannot help to talk about you, should I say.
I understood.
Yeah. So they are going to be those people who are going to help bring more people to the ball. That's a different way to look at it. Yeah, they're all coming to the ball.
One of the things that that we looked at is that you talk about speaking to the converted, and the messaging that we get is that we need to speak to everyone, and then the people who are willing will actually take up the message. And it's not a normal targeted thinking, and it's certainly not the thinking of we'll just keep talking to the people who are already converted into what we're doing. And part of that is actually recognizing that because we're doing some very new things, that the people who will resonate with it may not be remotely aware of the fact that they might resonate with this type of thing. So it's going to be a surprise to them that they resonate. And my position is that our job is to make sure that the message is actually put in front of a widely diverse and as many as possible people, and from whom surprising people from surprising avenues will come forward. And of course, that's part of our vision of diversity as well. But there's a lot in that, what I'm just talking about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, so you got to be. That would alter very dramatically the phrasing that you'd use to what Marianne was just describing. There'll be subtle changes that would address not only those people that are aware of what it is, but to make it interesting for those that have, in their periphery would have been exposed to some of these ideas. But it's not going to be immediately rejected.
Yeah.
And so the percentages of people that would take a step closer to you would be greater for those who are aware and are involved in what you are, for those that are not actively, and for those that may have heard of you. But then there's those who have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. If you present your case in such a way that they take a step towards that, I think that's what Neil was alluding to, because you make that step easy enough, and you pixel those people as far as your internal engine is concerned. If you pixel those people, wow, you're going to have some big machines to take care of that. Yeah. Because that's a huge audience.
Yeah, look, it's a huge area. Mary and I have recognized that we tend to be far too complex in our messaging. Stuff that we're talking about it's not so much that it's too high level for people, but in some way it's too many steps down the track. At least we can say that. It's far too many steps down the track. And I really like the idea of what you're talking about, which is to have systems in place which actually immediately can be grasped upon. It's the first step, so that the first step is immediately grasped upon by the people who actually want to do it. But yeah.
Okay, just from what you just said there, in your machine, your internal machine that's going to take all of these inquiries, etc., in your machine, there's going to be a way to address the needs of those people who they understand everything you say. When it's complicated, you speak all that stuff, they understand it and they're ready to accept it. There will be a way in your machine to address those people, and you would speak to only them, and they would love you, as would those people if there was different steps that you could classify people in 1 to 10, the 10 being the ones that they're absolutely aligned with everything that you say and do. They love it, and they will feed back to you the stuff. You know, they'll do whatever you want because they're zealots. You know, they're advocates for you. They speak your language. They know everything about it, and they just, you know, they slurp up everything that you give them. Now, there's going to be a communication avenue in your machine that would just speak directly to them. For those people on level, you know, 4 and 5, there's going to be a different avenue that is used within your machine. And for those, you know, the currently unwashed who've got no idea, they're on levels 1 and 2. There's going to be a different avenue that is used to speak to them. Even the language is going to be different that you use to speak to them as opposed to the level 10. So that's, you know, that's part of your machine, and you just got to adjust the, you know, just the words and frequency and all those different, you know, different things that are involved in having a wonderful machine operating.
Let's talk about that again.
Yeah, let's talk about it. I agree. Let's talk about that again. So thank you, Hori, and thank you, Mariana, and Laura, who's departed from the conversation, but great contribution that she made as well. Definitely. And, you know, we'll go forward and you know, really connect with people and allow this wonderful, worthy message to be translated to them.
Yeah, and I'll have to get myself accustomed to walking with a limp. Not having one of my seeing as how you've got Hori's ball with you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, of course, yes.
Okay, Marianne, thank you very much for today. And Neil.
It was terrible. Okay. We'll catch you later. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.